Today, our court session involves two cases about property. In the first case, it's neighbor against neighbor. Is someone a hoarder? Second case, a man purchases a house only to discover something very, very disturbing. All right, in our first case, court is in session. You brought a lawsuit. I understand that you're having a problem with your neighbor. Tell me a little bit about where you live and how you got there, and we'll take it from there.
Well, I've been saving money for a really long time, and I finally figured out that it was time for me to buy my own house. And so I looked all over the place. I wanted to find the perfect house, and I thought I did. I found this house. It's pretty secluded, pretty quiet. There's farmland on one side and, well, this guy on the other side. Before I bought the house, I, met him. He seemed nice-ish. I mean, he wasn't coming over to my house with a welcome wagon or anything, but he seemed fine. And after a little bit, I started noticing some weird quirks about him.
Well, before we get to that, tell me a little bit more about the house, because I believe that there's a problem with your backyard. Describe your backyard to me.
Well, we have a lot of trees on our property. And a lot of his trees kind of hang over onto my property. And now the leaves on my trees fell a little earlier than the leaves on his trees. And so I hired a company to come in and haul those leaves off. And then about a week later, the leaves on his...
Excuse me, did you pay? Because I think in the complaint I saw that you were claiming $600 to have the leaves taken from your property, but I'm assuming now you're talking about more leaves?
That's right. I paid $600 for the leaves from my trees, and now the leaves from his trees that have landed on my property are all over the place, and I don't think I should have to pay another $600 for something that's on his property that's causing a problem on my property.
Well, let me just ask him a question or two, and then I'll come back to you. Well, first of all, how long have you been living in this house?
I've been there for a little less than a year now.
Okay, so you moved in over the summer?
Right.
So it was before the fall?
I've never had a fall at this house yet.
How about you? How long have you been in the property?
I've been there for years, Your Honor. Very long time. I've owned the home for quite a long time.
Have you always had neighbor problems?
No. Actually, the previous neighbors were well, they were kind of enclosed. They stayed to themselves. They didn't complain a lot. They didn't. They did their own thing, and they kept up with their house. So no, I had no problems with them at all.
Was there ever a complaint in the past about leaves from your tree?
No, absolutely not. I take a lot of pride in my yard, and I make sure I tidy up and clean up, and I'm constantly cleaning up branches and leaves and things like that. And I like to keep my lawn very well maintained.
He likes to keep his lawn so well maintained that I caught him vacuuming his lawn. No,
Your Honor, it was a custom lawn vacuum I had built by a gentleman who owns a small engine business. It's
I gather it's a well-kept lawn.
Yes, absolutely, Your Honor. I have lots of pictures, and I take a lot of pride in it.
All right. Well, you also filed a cross complaint, and you're claiming. Tell me a little bit about what you're claiming. Something involving a tent and.
Your Honor, I don't know what's going on in her household, but she collects things that she claims are valuable. I don't understand how valuable they can be if you keep them in a tent in your yard. And apparently the tent's not big enough. It's all over the yard, outside the tent too. I guess it's full. I don't know. But there's holes in it, and I see birds flying in and out of the holes and things like that.
And maybe a few leaves in there?
I don't know about
But anyway, tell me some more.
Well, it's just that it's an eyesore. It's terrible. I take a lot of time in my yard to make sure. I think that's my responsibility to clean up my own yard, and I think it's upholding my responsibility to the community to keep a nice yard also. And she doesn't seem to be holding up her end. She's a little different. She's got things all over her yard. I think she has a train car back there.
Well, just so we're clear here, you're seeking $600 from him to clean up your yard, and you want her to take this tent down. I believe in your notes you said she was a hoarder.
Absolutely.
That's ridiculous.
Your Honor, I may have even sent her name into the show. I'm just saying that there's obviously a problem.
Well, you send her name into the
the
hoarder
show, the hoarder
the TV show that's on?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Did anybody show up with any cameras lately? Or?
No, no one ever showed up. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Not yet.
They called me because he called them, and he clearly misrepresented what my house was to them, because this is absolutely ridiculous.
Of course she's going to say her house is fine, but she's living in it. Everybody else has to see it all the time. It's a mess. She's always on a deck yelling and screaming on her phone, and she's very disrespectful to people around her, and her yard is just a mess. It's terrible.
Well, tell me a little bit about, you have a tent. It's not like a circus tent or anything like that.
No, Your Honor, it's not a circus tent. I collect things. I like to go to flea markets. I go on Amazon, Craigslist. You know, I collect valuable items.
Valuable. It looks like she's having a yard sale all year, Your Honor.
Well, you know what? It's my property. Why can't I treat my property?
So I'm clear. You're not having like a yard sale every day?
No, I'm not.
All right. Well, tell me a little bit about the things that you collect. What are in the yard? Are they like gardening tools, or what are they?
No, I mean, I have some antique lamps. I have some, you know, old Coke memorabilia, things that people like to collect, antiques. And yes, I have an old railroad car, but I mean, come on, that's awesome.
A railroad car?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
You see, Your Honor? Do you see?
Well, the railroad car, I assume there are no tracks nearby, right?
No, Your Honor.
All right.
And it's loaded with things. And she says these things are valuable. Then why are they in the yard in a messy tent?
Are there things in the railroad car too?
There are a few things in the railroad car.
Uh-huh. And the railroad car is not under the tent. So you have the tent with a lot of things, plus you have the railroad car.
Right.
Plus now you're saying everything's covered with leaves.
Well, yes.
But when it's not covered with leaves, like, are you buying and selling things, or are they just being stored there?
I mean, I buy a little more than I sell, but that's why I do it. You know, we have a tough economy. I never know when I'm going to need some more money. So if I see something that's a deal that I could make money from, I get it. And, you know, I might need to sell everything one day.
Well, I think in the complaint, in your cross complaint, you also said that she also had stuff out around the deck and
absolutely,
not just under the tent.
It's just things sticking out of her deck. It's not even organized at all. It's just it looks like she just unloaded a truckload of things and shoved it underneath her deck.
I don't see how my being organized or unorganized is any of your business.
Because it's terrible. It creates a habitat for rodents too. We could be getting rodents and things. We don't need those things running through our yard.
Have you seen any rodents?
Raccoons and things like that, yes.
Well, you live out by farm.
Well, they're a little out of the ordinary to be so close to our house, though. We always see squirrels and things, but nothing that...
You don't keep foodstuffs out there.
No, I don't keep food out. And that's the other thing, Your Honor. It's ridiculous that he lives next to a farm, and yet the second a piece of dirt lands on his property, he freaks out. He's like Felix from The Odd Couple.
Your Honor, anyway, these things about the leaves, too, how does she know they're coming from my tree? What do you sit there in the window?
Ask me, how do you know they're coming from his tree and not like from somewhere else?
They're not color-coded.
They aren't color-coded, but I mean, when I had my first round of leaves collected, the trees on my property were pretty much barren by then, and the trees on your property still had leaves. So now I know that the leaves that are on my yard now are from his property.
Well, did you look again, and the leaves on the leaves on his property are gone? So that would be circumstantial evidence, right? You didn't see them falling.
I didn't see them fall, Your Honor, no.
All right.
And Your Honor, just to make note, this company she had come clean up for her, they didn't do a very good job, because a lot of that stuff, they blew into my yard, and I didn't say anything to her about it. I went about my business with my lawn vacuum, and I took care of it myself. And she's, some reason, has the need to complain about maybe a couple of my leaves being in her lawn. I think it's absurd.
So the company didn't have a lawn vacuum?
No, they did not, Your Honor.
I don't think many people do, Your Honor.
All right, well, here's what we're going to do. I have to decide on both, the claim and the cross-claim. So I'm going to take that under advisement a little bit, and then I'm going to come back with a decision, and we'll see where we're going. So there'll be a very short recess. Okay, I've heard the case about the leaves on the lawn, and I've heard the case about the tents. On the leaves on the lawn, I'm going to have to rule in favor of the defendant because for several reasons. Number one, the leaves are coming from his tree, but they're hanging over your property and came onto your property. And when you bought the property, it was pretty obvious to you that there was a tree there. And so on that, I'm going to rule. On the tent, I'm going to rule that you can keep the tent, but that you have to clean up the yard. You can't just have things all over the yard. And as far as the hoarders show, just let me know when you're on, and I'll be happy to watch it. Thank you both. That's my decision. We're in recess. This case involves the sale of a house and the purchase of a house. And so that I'm clear, we have seller number 1 sold the house to seller number 2, and the price was below the fair market value. Seller number 2 then sold the house to Joey. Seller number 2 is no longer available. We don't know where they are. They're gone. So Joey has sued the realtor. I believe what you're claiming. Well, let's hear it from your own words. What do you want? And then tell me a little bit about the problem.
Well, first, I want to actually have the contract completely done away with. As soon as I moved into the new home, I began experiencing all sorts of paranormal activity according to what...
Okay, before we get to that, tell me a little bit about your house search. Was this the first house you saw? Or
there are a few houses. I'm a pizza chef in the area, and I do own a few restaurants. And we checked out a few homes. Some of the homes had, stuff that I really didn't need, but what I was really looking for was a nice kitchen, because I am a chef.
Okay, and then you contacted our real estate agent.
I contacted him. He showed me a few homes.
Okay.
And basically,
so you two had a relationship. You knew him?
Not prior to this sale. No, sir, I did not.
So you hadn't had any other dealings with him?
No. This is the first one.
But he contacted you?
He contacted me, and I bent over backwards to try and find a home. I knew what he was aware of. I wasn't really interested in the commission or the money. I'm the type of person that's been in business for about 5 years, and my concern was to satisfy the customer. Okay. He was dead set on finding all he wanted was a kitchen. I wish I would have had just a kitchen and not a home to sell him, because I think that's probably what I would have sold him, because that's all he wanted. I received calls at 6 o'clock in the morning. Did you find me anything yet? He was very anxious to get into the area, get started, and he needed a kitchen.
Okay. Do you normally open at 6 in the morning?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right. So you wanted a house with a kitchen.
Yes.
And this house that you're in now, or that you bought, tell me a little bit about the house. It had a nice kitchen?
Nice kitchen. The overall layout was, what I definitely, needed. I didn't have to have the way it was, but the kitchen was the main sticking point of me purchasing the home.
What about the yard, the physical structure of the house?
Physical structure, well, the structure, definitely needs some work on it. There was some shingles loose on the roof. Painting needed to be done outside the house.
The price was adjusted, Your Honor, for those couple items that he had mentioned. I contacted the seller and told him of this, and they reduced the prices.
And the first time was below fair market value, but this time it was closer to what you would call fair market value?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, the economy has really taken a hit. The real estate industry, I should say, has taken a good hit. And it's a definite buyer's market out there right now. Okay. So I believe that the main reason that the price was established was because basically of the economy and the way things have been in the real estate market.
Okay, so you got a kitchen, you got a house. Now tell me a little bit, you're not happy, you want your money back.
Absolutely.
Why?
Well, the first night that I stayed in the new home, well, one of the first things I did was go into the kitchen, just looking around, searching around, type of equipment that was there. I really did, like I said before, I really did like the kitchen. That first night in the new home, strange things were starting to happen. and I couldn't sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night. I was in a cold sweat. I actually had a nightmare of a male shooting a female, and I had woken up. So I had gotten up out of bed, and I, have a little workstation where I keep my bills and such for my businesses. And I noticed, a pen, that was stationary, just roll right off the side of the desk.
Did any pizza make itself? That would have made your job a little more easy, wouldn't it?
I wish that could have happened,
All right,
but no.
So you're saying there's some strange things happening.
There's strange things happening. I see shadows, and I also hear footsteps as well. And quite frankly, it scared the heck out of me.
Well, why would that be a reason, though, for me to say, well, you get your money back because you had some nightmares, or did you find something else?
I did find something else out. The next morning, I just got curious. I searched through other areas of the house, and I found a record. I don't remember if it was a newspaper or a record that there was a murder-suicide committed in this house.
In the very house you're talking about?
In the very house I'm talking about.
Did you find out where it was committed?
I don't recall where it was committed, but I saw the clipping of the article or whatever it may have been, that there was a murder-suicide committed in the house.
Well, let me ask you, was there in fact a murder-suicide?
Yes, sir, there was.
And was it before the last sellers or the first sellers?
It was before the last seller.
So there was a murder-suicide, and the house was then sold below the market value to sellers number 1, who then sold it to sellers number 2, and now sellers number 2 sold it to this gentleman.
That's correct.
Did you explain to him about the murder-suicide?
A number of things here, if I might address the court with them. Number one is I made every attempt to find this gentleman a nice home that met his requirements. His requirements were primarily a kitchen. When I showed him the home, I wanted to take him upstairs. He didn't even want to look upstairs. He was so fascinated by the kitchen, the view from the kitchen, and he was dead sold on that. That's number one.
Oh, I am a chef.
Number two, well, I satisfied that as finding you a place where you could, do what you do. And number two is that I knew of it. I mean, it was all over the news, this murder-suicide. It was, in fact, I think it even made the national news, the CNN and Fox News Network. So it was not something that was being concealed. In the disclosure statements, it's not necessary to put that type of thing in a disclosure statement, as far as I know. And I never concealed this type of thing from him. And then number three is, I just don't understand how the real estate company is held responsible for this. We did our job, and we did it according to the law. And I don't understand why I should, or the real estate company that I represent should give him his money back and nullify the sale.
Well, part of the issue on that would be is, number one, the sellers are gone. They can't be sued. And number two, you could only be sued if the court finds that you should have disclosed to him the fact that there was a murder-suicide. But let me ask you, how come you didn't know about it? I mean, as he said, it was all over the news.
I had no...
You don't watch the news?
No prior knowledge. I'm a very busy man. I own several pizzerias in the area. I don't get a chance to sit down and watch TV like some people do, every night on a normal basis. But prior to this, which I would like to address the court with, was that I told him that I was a superstitious person, and I had to have the address changed from 13th Hill Street to 12.
And we bent over backwards to accommodate that.
But so wouldn't you think that knowing that there was a murder-suicide committed in this house, that, okay, this guy's a little superstitious, maybe if I have half a brain in my head, I want to tell this person, about this, because maybe he might not want to purchase.
First of all, I have a full brain in my head, okay? Secondly, it was all over the news. It wasn't something I purposely concealed from you.
Well, I must have
in the third sense, I
news.
bent over backwards to show you approximately 6 homes that you didn't want to have anything to do with, and this one you were focused on.
That's
the
what a realtor does.
I did my job.
I
fully.
need to know more about the structure before we talk about the paranormal. Again, there was basically some shingles, and I thought I saw in the paperwork some locks were backwards, some little things. And you said that the price was adjusted for that, correct?
That's correct. When I contacted the second buyer or second seller, they adjusted the price on the basis of the knowledge of loose shingles and other little minor problems. So the price was already reduced.
Do you think the first price was adjusted for paranormal activity, that it sold below fair market value? And I say this in all seriousness.
And to be honest with you, I'd have to say it's a possibility. I would think, because it was being sold right after the murder-suicide did take place.
Well, was that a problem? Is that why it wasn't sold the first time? Or don't you know?
I have no clue. We didn't handle the transaction.
Well, I guess the question I have is, you know, like you like the kitchen, you like the house, you like the location.
I'm scared to death every night, Your Honor.
But
Can I bring up...
if he had told you there was a murder-suicide years ago, whatever it was, 6, 7 years ago, would you have bought the house?
Being the superstitious person that I am, probably not.
You were going to say something.
I have found, after just checking into a couple things of my own, that this gentleman here most recently, and I would like it brought out that he had an aunt that passed away and left, and this is what my understanding was, I needed cleared up, that he had an aunt that passed away and left him a house. And this just happened most recently. Now, if you have a free house on this side and a house you just bought here on this side that you paid money for, and you need a home, and you want a home, wouldn't free override expense? And I think this has something to do with the case.
I think what you're saying, and I want to hear your answer, is he's saying that apparently you have a home you can go to for free, and that's why you want your money back.
Didn't have everything that I wanted.
You have a kitchen?
It didn't have a kitchen up to my standards.
Well, so what are you saying? Are you saying...
I'm able to afford things, so I purchased it. I wanted to go out on my own.
You're saying the house you inherited doesn't matter?
Not to me, it doesn't, no. I wanted to purchase another home. I didn't feel that I needed to have to go move into my
One more
relative's
question.
house.
Did you have these incidents of paranormal activity, pen moving across the counter or whatever you told me? Did you have those before you knew that there was a murder-suicide, or after?
It was before I knew that there was a murder.
So you didn't know that. All right,
I just think that the claims that he's making, if they are true, my opinion would be, strictly my opinion, that if the claims he's making and he saw pencils move and shadows and everything else and or didn't, I think he just needs some kind of counseling. This is ridiculous.
Well, I invite you to come spend the night in the house.
Gentlemen, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to stand in recess. We'll be back with the decision shortly. All right, we're back in session. In this case involving the purchase of the house, I understand you're seeking, your full purchase price because you're alleging you didn't know about an event that occurred in the house. But my ruling is that the realtor did all that they had to do in this particular case under these facts, so the case is dismissed. Judgment for the defendant.
Judge, is there a constitutional right to do whatever you want to do with your property?
Well, the short answer is no. It's true that the Founding Fathers, when they established the Constitution and our form of government, was property was paramount. You had to be a property owner to vote. You had to be a property owner for everything. Over the years, it's been established that there's no absolute right to do whatever you want with property. So that's why we have zoning laws, restrictions on property. In the first case, the problem with the property was who owned the leaves when they fell from the tree, from the neighbor's yard onto the other yard. And the person who owns the property on which the leaves fell would be the one that would have to clean them up, especially in this case under these facts, because when she bought the property, she saw the tree, she saw the overhang, she was aware of it. As to the other part of it, so there are restrictions on property.
Okay, and I have another question, Judge. What if a person really is a hoarder?
Well, then there would be zoning laws would apply, and that's another example where people cannot use the property to do whatever they want. And there's a television show called Hoarders that everybody's aware of, and in the second part of the first case, the individual was supposedly hoarding, was just bringing all kinds of things in the yard. And even if there were no zoning restrictions, there are principles of case law that would apply that you might not be able to do it to any extreme. However, you can certainly store things on property. The question was, when does it become hoarding and when does it violate any particular law? Now, zoning laws did not come into play in this case, but if they had, then she would have had to remove the tent.
Okay, and one more quick question, Judge. What do people have to disclose in the sale of real property?
Well, in the second case, there's a claim of non-disclosure of a murder-suicide that happened on the property. And that's an interesting issue that's going through our courts. And the fact is the legislature passed a law that there are certain things that have to be disclosed. And most of them involve structural damage. Was there damage to the foundation? Were there termites? Those things have to be disclosed. Whether or not there was alleged paranormal activity or years before a murder-suicide on the property, even though the buyer might want to know those things, it's not really clear yet if that's what the legislature meant on the disclosure forms. So as of right now, I would say the current state of law is if it's not structural, it doesn't have to be disclosed, but I want to caution that that could be changed in the very near future. I also want to point out we have a Facebook page. It's called the Judge Stevens Show on Facebook. We're going to have these cases listed in some way that you could comment on your thoughts. We would like to know if you agree or if you disagree with the decision in the case about the hoarder and the leaves on the property, and in the second case about the non-disclosure of a murder-suicide on the property. So if you agree with it, don't hesitate to put agree. If you disagree, come on onto Facebook and tell me you disagree and why, because that's what this show's all about. I'd like to thank SSP TV for their professionalism and for doing the show.